So we've done all this talking, and we haven't actually talked about painting yet, and it's Substance Painter. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about painting. Painting is pretty cool. I'm going to go ahead and just so we're not getting distracted by the environment, I'm going to turn that down. Before we get into painting, though, I want to talk... Well, no, let's go ahead and get into painting, and you actually see where resolution comes into play, because resolution is another really cool thing about this program. So if we want to paint something, all you have to do, I'm going to go ahead and throw one of these plain Jane layers up here. And we've already talked about this. If you go to your brushes here, default brush, here's your brush settings. You can change the flow, size, all that stuff. You can hold down control. And these are how to change the hardness, the brush size, and the flow and the rotation as well. If you go horizontal or vertical, depending on if you do control right or control left click, all that good stuff. And down here we have color, height, roughness, and metal. We don't have our emissive channel anymore, but if you want to add that, you can go ahead and add any other channels you want to. And so for our base color, if we just choose a red, and then we choose a roughness, we'll make it really shiny and non-metallic. So if I go ahead and just start painting, you're going to see I'm going to paint shiny plastic on her. If I hold down control and right click, you're going to see I can make my brush size bigger. If I go horizontally and then vertically, I can change the hardness on the fly, or you can go up here to your brush settings and change that in there manually with the sliders. Oh, another thing about the sliders, if you just click this pin, you can actually type in the number. So FYI. So now that we've talked about that, we can start painting. So I'm going to go ahead and make this brush size a little bit smaller. And I start painting. Now you're going to see as I'm painting on the chest, this is completely asymmetrical. That's because if I go to my 2D view and I zoom out, you're going to see where my chest is. This is laid out flat in my 0 to 1, so there's no overlapping UVs. However, let's go to 2D, 3D here. If I go to my shoulder pad, to kind of save space in my texture map, I went ahead and overlapped these vertices, or the UVs where the shoulders are. So you're going to see the shoulders are actually textured the exact same way, but you kind of don't notice it because they're on separate parts of the body. Or maybe you do, I don't know. Maybe I made a bad decision. But regardless, because these shoulder pad UVs are overlapping, if I paint over here, it's going to paint symmetrically because that's all it knows. It knows that these UVs are sharing the same space, so as I'm painting one side, it has to paint the other. However, even on pieces like the chest that are laid out flat, so I can paint across like this in my UV space as well. If you want to paint symmetrically for some reason, all you got to do is go up here to where it says symmetry, turn that on, and right now that's symmetry across the x-axis. Now I can paint across symmetry even if it's not symmetrical in my area, or I don't have overlapping UVs. So that's pretty cool. Now we've done a lot of painting with the default brush. Let's go ahead and go back to just our 3D view here. There's a ton of other brushes in here, and even particle and tools, which we'll get into in a second. But for example, brushes in here, you can go to dirt, and instead of doing like a red, let's go ahead and just like paint on some dirt. So I'm going to choose like a dirt type material here, okay. And then it's going to be pretty rough and not metallic. So now I've got dirt with a dirt brush, and now I can just kind of paint in where I want dirt to go. Or you can go down here to fibers and kind of paint with some fibers, or even better, go down here to like scratches. And then if you choose, if you don't want to scratch to that, if you want to scratch, ooh, here's a good one. Let's say you want to kind of do a quick scratch down to this metal and you don't want to go and do it through a mask. If you want to sample all of the properties of this metal, and again, the properties are, if I hit C, it's going to pick up the base color, the height, the roughness, and the metallic. So I'm going to hit M. If I hit the P key and sample that metal here and click, it's going to go through and sample everything that was under my cursor here, the base color, roughness, metallic, and height for this one area. So now as scratches in here, or the scratchy brush, I can go in here and paint some scratches. Let's go ahead and change the scratches 5. There we go. We can go ahead and start wearing this down, and we're basically just brushing with those material properties. So that's something kind of cool you can do. If you want to confine it to an area, let's go ahead. I'm going to kill this layer and make a new one here. So let's say we were painting with our, let's go back to our default brush here. Painting with red, let's paint with blue. So we're painting with blue, a pretty shiny plastic here. And if we want to conform where we want to paint this plastic, what you can do is you can of course right click and add a black mask, and that's going to mean it goes nowhere. And then with this mask selected, you can right click and do add a color selection, and then go ahead and pick, I only want to paint where it's going to be red. But nothing happened. All I did was create a mask. So if I click back on this layer, it's only going to allow me to paint where the red was. But you can go in here and paint individually. So it's like, I actually wanted blue shoulder pads and yellow everything else. So you can kind of go in there and use that as a masking alternative. And if we kill this mask, and let's go ahead and add a black mask here. If you go over here to our geometry decal area, and I don't have the color, the material selection selected. I've got my mask selected area. If I go over here to where it says faces, here's triangles, faces, and then just vert welded objects. Let's see if I got any vert welded objects here. I think so. So if I have the mask selected and if I do black, nothing's going to happen, because all it is doing the vert welded areas and then filling it with black, which of course isn't going to change my mask at all. However, if I go all the way up to white and then click on these, for example, it's still not going to do anything because I don't have anything painted down here. So all it is updating my mask here. So what I need to do is go ahead and remove my mask, and then we'll add a black mask. And now what we're going to do is, with white selected, I'm going to choose vert welded objects. I'm going to click these two belt areas. And now that if I roll over this, you're going to see my belt areas, or these strap areas, have been changed to white. Now I can go back to painting here, and I can just be confined. Oops, got to select my brush mode here. I will be confined to just those areas where it was white in my mask. So a couple different ways to kind of mask out layers with color selection, with our color selection node, or going through and masking with geometry.